Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Um, my name is Michelle, and I'm the Executive Assistant at TQ Construction. Wanted to welcome you all to today's webinar called Before Construction, Understanding Your Home Design Package. I will be mentioning a few housekeeping notes before we start. This session is being recorded. A recording link will be shared with you in a follow-up email in the next day or two. Please stay muted throughout the webinar to avoid disruptions. We will also have a Q&A, of course, at the end of the session, and feel free to ask any questions along the way in the chat box below, and Megan will answer your questions at the end. Megan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Had
Wonderful.
to had to kick the family members out of the office space. Had to tell them to vamoose.
And so,
Everyone's coming in for last minute hugs.
aw, cute little ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will kindly introduce you to everyone as TQ's Project Relations, Megan, and our host for today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. So like Michelle said, we are going through, understanding all of the construction documentation today. And thank you so much to Michelle who joins our webinars and helps us with the back end administration of everything because she always downplays her role, but honestly, this thing would be impossible with having her here to help. It's really difficult for me to monitor both people trying to get into the webinar and people trying to send in questions and all of that. So I always want to make a point of thanking Michelle for her time and her support through these webinars. They'd be 1,000 times harder without her. Diving into today's topics. So, if you're new to our webinars, we typically follow kind of a, a set kind of table of contents where we have our topics that we're going to go over for the day. We touch on them briefly, and then we just kind of have we go over them again, kind of have the list of them again at the end as like a reminder of these were all the things that we talked about. Um, it's just for me, it's just like standard format essay format. It's like, this is what we're going to talk about it. This is what we talked about. It's also really great because at the end, if people have questions, we can kind of refer back to things really easily as well. So the things that we're going to go through today are documentation hierarchy. Then we're going to look at what a site plan looks like. We're going to look at floor plans. So we're basically going to look at a bunch of examples of types of drawings today and types of documentation. Exterior elevations, interior design details, construction details, material selections, and then what your different types of drawing sets are, mostly in name. So the idea is to kind of go through a bunch of information and kind of try to point out things that you can kind of look for that will point you in the right direction to make it easier to read your documentation and get the information that you're needing. Because every company does it a little bit differently, but we all follow reasonably the same drawing standards. So documentation hierarchy is super important because it tells you like human error happens. And so sometimes there might be a conflict between one document and another document. But things also change over time. Like details also change over time based on decisions that are made either for, budget reasons or you went to someone's house and you saw a specific detail in their bathroom or their kitchen and you were like, I must have that. So all of these things need to be reflected in your documentation. So it's really important that your documentation hierarchy is is followed so that in the event of a conflict or if one thing's missed somewhere, you're following the correct details off of the correct documentation. Documentation hierarchy is one of those things that are pretty standard, and you can always double check with whatever company you're working with what their documentation hierarchy is. But like I said, it's pretty standard. Like this is pretty much the same one that I was taught when I was in school, and TQ uses it. A bunch of other companies use it. It's what's referenced in like all of your standard like construction contracts and all of those kinds of things. So it's kind of our template that we go back to. So I am going to run through it quickly. Dimensions annotated on a drawing are more like taken word over greater than dimensions scaled of the same drawing. So essentially, all drawings are drawn at a scale. So, like a quarter of an inch is equal to a foot, for example. It's a really common one. And so, if you see that something's been dimensioned on that floor plan, and we'll go through some examples of this and I'll call back to this, it is like if something's dimensioned at 14 feet, for example, and then you take out your scale ruler, and by scale, you're like, oh, well, that should be 13 and a half feet. The assumption is that what's typed on the dimension is the true dimension because it's assumed that, there could be a printing error, there could be a scaling error. Um, as much as we assume that all rulers are the same, they're not, which is a fun thing to do if you ever go to like the hardware store, compare different measuring tapes. See if all their inches are the same. Drawings of a larger scale, so that are more blown up, are of greater value than drawings of a smaller scale of the same date. So basically, things that are newer, dated newer, are also going to be considered more correct than things that are dated older. Material and finishing schedules are considered to be greater than specifications. So in your drawing set, there's actually like we'll go through them, examples of schedules, which are references usually to your specifications, but specifically on your drawings, so that essentially you end up with one master document. And so it's assumed that those are more correct than your specifications document, which is a working document that you'll use with your design team to figure out your material selections. Um, your specifications, however, are considered to be more detailed than just like a floor plan drawing. And therefore, they're given more hierarchy than just the floor plans. So the schedules in the drawings are considered to be more correct than specifications. However, the specifications are considered to be more correct than just like a note on a drawing that says like hardwood. Plan drawings are considered to be more correct than elevation drawings of the same scale. So that's because plan drawings are usually like what we base everything off of. It's the first thing where if something gets changed, it's going to be changed on your plan drawing. And then it's supposed to be later reflected in your elevation drawings. And then documents of a later date, which I already mentioned kind of earlier, are more correct than documents of an earlier date, assuming that those documents have been signed off on, right? So working documents are working documents. These are for like documents that have been signed off on for construction. You'll know because they'll be labeled really clearly. Some companies use like a big green stamp that say like issued for construction. Your design team will make a really big deal about being like, I need you to sign off on these because these are our construction set of drawings and documentation. So that's the hierarchy, and that you can kind of keep in mind as you look at stuff. The rules of thumb are really like things that are bigger, more accurate than things that are like more zoomed out, and things that are newer are considered to be more accurate than things that are older. And things are kind of like based off of each other in the ladder. So whatever your primary document is that you kind of build your entire design off of is kind of like your ruling document that we build off of. So this page has a lot of information in it. This is kind of like our site plan and our title block sort of page. So this is the first page that you'll see in like most drawing sets, like architectural drawing sets. And so what you'll see on a set like this is a bunch of project data over here in the lower left-hand side. I don't know if you can actually see my blue dot waving around or not. But it's the project data in the lower left-hand side. And that has like a bunch of information about your project, which for the most part, you probably don't need to worry about unless you're curious. It's got like all of the official like legal information, zoning information, all of that sort of stuff. And then we have kind of over on this side, we have general notes on the right side, the big long list of notes. And all of that are kind of like references to like the building code or your local municipal bylaw that like we're going to follow all of the rules basically. And we're assuming that all of the rules apply to our design and our drawings. Um, Most companies have a template of this that we update every so once in a while when bylaws get re-released and building codes get re-released. Um, because it's a lot of information and it keeps us from having to put a bunch of repetitive notes throughout the course of the drawings. Again, typically not something that most people need to like worry about. It's more like if you're interested, please feel free to give it a read through. Um, but it's also really great to just like understand what all of that is. And then also if you do read through it, you might get some clarity on like why a wall is a certain thickness and things like that. Next to just to the left of the general notes, we've got our wall schedule. So you'll often see like wall schedules, floor schedules. You might see like window schedules. Sometimes they'll have pictures next to them that depict like what the assembly actually looks like that's blown up for, plan checkers or for the construction crew to see like physically how it all lines up together. In this case, we've just got tags. Um, and then in the center, we kind of have more like project specific sort of stuff, like pictures of the existing project, the existing home, and then general project scope, like, you know, the intro basically to the project. Like, this is what we're planning to do. These are the things that we're going to be dealing with, working with. And then having a general like site plan of the project. In this case, we have stripped off, like, I've stripped off the address off of this particular site plan um, for the privacy of the client. But typically, you'll see like either a ground floor plan or just a block out of the existing home where it lays, where it sits on the site, what your setbacks are of the site, where your tree protections are. That's what it is, what these circles are along the top of the page. So you'll see a lot of information about like where your project can be on the site on this page. It's really helpful for, new builds, additions, anything where you're going to be changing the exterior of the home. So we've kind of this shows the site plan a little bit bigger just because the previous one has it zoomed out a little bit more. So it kind of allows to see, where north is, um, lets you see like how far away you are from your sidewalks. And then we always have like, for example, um, we would have like our front yard setbacks and then how far the front of the building actually is. So for, I believe, one of these is the front yard setback. The notes are all really small and hard for me to see. Um, but you'll have like your side setbacks and all of that so that it's all clearly annotated. Which might tell you why, like, for example, you may only have a building of a certain size or why your designer may push um to expand in a specific direction, or might tell you that like it might be a little bit tight doing something. Floor plans are when you start to dive in and look inside. And this is what we typically start with when we're working with a design because we want to make sure that the general flow works and we want to make sure that the general like scope of work is correct. I guess. So in this case, we have the existing main level and a proposed main level. So you'll see multiple versions of proposals where you'll have your this is what's existing in the event of a renovation. And if you're doing a new build, you'll just have like your site plan with your bubble, and then you'll see like a bunch of proposed options. Um, Oftentimes, when you're doing a renovation, you're going to see more than just like one proposal. It's just too much to put on this page. But the things that you're kind of looking for on something like this that will help you read this is so you'll see these letters and these numbers or bubbles on the side. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and 1, 2, 3. Me trying not to get carried away with myself and do the entire alphabet for you this evening. Those intersections are going to be located at exactly the same spot on each of your drawings. So this is really helpful for navigating between floors and also between proposals so that you can get a really clear sense of like where things are moving from, and also trying to get a sense of what is stacked on top of each other. So it's really useful for us in terms of our team and planning, but it's also really helpful to our clients because once they understand that, they can be like, oh, D1 is the same here as it is on proposal 1, 2, and 3, even though they might be on different pages. The other kinds of things that you'll be looking for on your floor plans to kind of get some information is kind of like you'll have your ceiling height that's usually annotated underneath like what your room name is. You'll see like rise and run for your stairs, which kind of tell you like your rise is the rise part, and then the run is the tread depth. Which kind of tell you like a little bit about the design of the stair. Stairs have to be designed to a certain like we have a range, so it has to be between X and Y height and X and Y depth. You'll also see other things like your door sizes and your window sizes, where you've got your width times your height, to give you an idea of like what the door size is in a specific area. And if it's getting replaced, it'll be annotated as a new door on your proposed drawings. And then the other really interesting thing that you'll get, other than like the layout of your millwork and things like that, is you'll see on the proposed main level, there's a bunch of circles with arrows. And those will get added as you progress through your drawing set and as you get to the point where you're producing elevations in millwork drawings. And it'll show you where the view has been taken from. So, for example, the circle with the triangle that is just to the bottom of the kitchen island that's pointing towards the range, that elevation will show how the kitchen island looks, how the millwork looks behind it. You can see that they're really heavy in kitchen and bathroom areas because those are really super detailed areas. You would also see them in areas that have just like heavy millwork in general. You see that they're put in places to capture like the stairs and other features so that it's really clear what the placement of everything is when they go into construction. The other one that you'll see as a similar symbol will be like the cut through that's near the top of the page here that goes through the living room all the way through the stairs. And those are building sections, which are like cuts through the entire building that show you how everything's stacked as well. And so we'll get to those. And then you see a bunch of like legend sort of stuff that usually will appear on different drawings that show you, what's being touched, what's not being touched, how do we depict like a smoke detector and a fan and a fireplace and all of those things. The next one is exterior elevations. And so though elevations is just like the term that we use for an exterior flat drawing of a building, of a home. So we've got exterior elevations, and then we'll also look at interior elevations as well. These ones are super developed because they're from close to these are from like a completed construction drawing set. So what might happen is you might see a more simplified version of these earlier on that may not include all of your exterior finishes, such as the stone and some of the window details. They might start off as just like simple squares. But as you move through the process of creating your plan, and things becoming more solidified, you'll get to a point where you are specifying what your material selections are going to be, and your design team will reflect those on your drawing so that you can see what they physically look like. Um, Programs like Revit will also allow you to kind of render. So there will be like almost like a 3D render that's attached to that pattern in the program, so that you can kind of see different levels of realism to your selections. And typically design teams kind of, engage in more and more of that as we get closer to what our final design is. Because it's also like the more realistic a picture is, the more time it takes, like the more realistic a render is, the more time it takes for the computer to fabricate it, basically. They're faster now than they used to be, but just for like context, like a render can take like 20 minutes, it can take an hour, it can take 2 hours, it can also take 20 hours. So just like for context, these are interior design details and interior elevations, and these are the millwork sort of things that I was talking about before. This one in particular is actually from the opposite direction that I was pointing out in the floor plan. It's actually from, just for the sake of like, just on the top of the kitchen island in the proposed, looking down the page towards the back deck. So you can see like the island millwork on that side, and then you can see all of the Nana doors that were installed. And so on these, you'll see like really specific dimensions, like how wide are each of your drawers, how tall are they, where are the pulls located, um, what's starting to get specced into that area. So you'll start to see a lot more details on these. In pages like this, you'll also start to see more like selections as or like schedules of selections rather, making them those official schedules to refer back to with your drawing hierarchy. Because again, the drawing set is often what's sent out for quoting. Construction details. So construction details. So this one, for example, shows it's a demo plan and a framing plan. So construction details will show things that are really specific to the design team. In this case, it's showing walls that are being removed. Those are the dashed, dotted, ghost-like lines. And then it shows the new walls that are getting framed in this case. One of the other things that you might see is like a bunch of like building details that show exactly how, the walls are getting put together, exactly how an exterior finish is getting applied, or sometimes also like a tile layout, things like that. And those will all be like in your ID, like interior design and construction drawings. And then looking at your material selections documentation. So this might look a little bit different depending on who you're working with. This is what our documentation kind of looks like. From a client facing perspective, we tend to include like a bunch of extra information for ourselves internally. But like the main stuff is like, what does it physically look like? What is it? Where is it going? How many are we ordering? What's the general size of it? What are the like the material details? What are the number for it and everything for ordering? And then we usually try to include a link so that we can make sure that we can gather like all of the installation information at a later date, all of the specification information, It's really valuable to our design team, our construction team, and then also our administration team that collects all of this information afterwards and puts it into a hunky dunky homeowner binder and delivers it to our homeowners after the project is complete so that they have everything in one place. Um, so it's just really nice to be able to kind of visually see all of the things together. Of course, through your material selections process, you'll actually see these things in person, right? Like all of these tiles and all of those things. You'll see them all in person physically together, but this is the document that kind of pulls it all together. And then we pull all of that information and put it into a drawing set so that we can send it to all of our vendors and suppliers. They're like, this is what we want. Tell us how much it is. And go from there. So types of drawing sets. So there's different kinds of drawing sets. So all of the drawings that we've kind of gone over and like types of drawings that we've kind of gone over today, there's different types. So the main kind of classifications, if you will, are permit sets, which are all of the drawings that we produce for a given municipality based on their personalized requirements, because why would they all be the same? And given year, because they don't stay the same year over year. But essentially, we do like a development department set if we're changing the use of the property. So if we're doing like a new home construction, or if we're adding a laneway, if we're doing a multiplex or a duplex or whatever those things are, then you do need to create like a development set. It often does have a lot of overlap with your building set, but there are usually a few different pages. Then again, the building department wants their own set. The development department usually wants a lot more to do with like the site plan and your tree protection and making sure that you're taking care of the city engineering and your water hookups and your sewer hookups. Building department wants to know more about like the general layout of the project. They want to make sure that you have smoke detectors in all the right places. They want to make sure that all your windows are the correct sizes for fire egress and all of that fun jazz, and that you don't have too many windows because God forbid you have too many windows facing in the wrong direction. And then you have like your landscaping department, your engineering department. So everybody kind of wants like their own specific set of information. Sometimes they're okay with you just like tacking it in with someone else's drawing set. Sometimes they're like, no, I want these 3 specific pages. Give me nothing else. Architectural sets are the sets that are developed usually internally by your design team, which include a lot of the ones that we were going over today, which, you know, they'll talk about like your general design, what your construction details are, and then all of your like super detailed design oriented sort of stuff, what all your assemblies are, your general layout of things, and to varying degrees of detail. So depending on how important it is to blow a section up, you may not need to blow up an entire house to a 1/2 inch scale, 1/2 inch to a foot. But you might want to do that with like your kitchen, your bathroom, or maybe your walk-in closet, like spaces that are extremely detailed. And then you have your consultant sets, and those are sets that your design team does not produce. Those are sets that other consultants produce based off of typically a drawing set that they've requested from your design team. So structural engineers, mechanical engineers, sometimes your electrical plan is produced by your design team, working with your electrician. Sometimes your electrician produces it for your design team. There's usually a little bit of like coordination on that one, depending on your electrician and what their preferences are. And then like any sort of like energy sort of stuff. Those are all things that are either like certificates or drawing sets that are produced by specific consultants. Most of these consultants are required. I forgot like the tree protection as well would go on there, and they would ask for like a site plan and do like a tree protection sort of thing. Survey, all of those things. Someone else produces those. And so all of that kind of comes together kind of backwards from consultant sets and architectural sets, and they all kind of feed into the information that goes into the permit sets, which is stripped down for the information that the city wants. So that was a lot of information in a very short period of time. But kind of recapping what we went over. So we went over drawing documentation hierarchy, which, what rules over what to look for your details and to make sure what's the most correct. We went over, what general site plans look like, floor plans, exterior elevations, interior design details, construction details, material selections, and then just generally what your package might look like and what they might consist of. So your types of drawing sets. Does anyone have any questions? And if you need me to refer back to a specific slide, I definitely can.
Currently, there are no questions, but we're definitely open to hearing any questions at this moment. Good. Oh, we do have a raised hand here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cora.
It's actually Peter. Cora's my
I
wife.
am so sorry, Peter.
No problems. I know it shows Cora. So I was just wondering, like, when we're looking at drawings or trying to figure out the drawing package or design package here.
Mhm.
Let's say we have a land, we have our land and everything, and we want to build a house. Okay.
Mhm.
There's certain trees that are on the property and everything. Now, when do you like, would you design your house first before figuring out how it fits on your land? Or would you figure out with the city which trees have to be kept and then develop your drawings and all that sort of stuff?
So, for for the answer is that we would do a zoning study.
Okay,
So we do need to at some point consult with what's called an arborist to find out from them which trees can get taken down and which trees can't get taken down.
okay,
Ultimately, the city does have to be reasonable to a certain degree. So if you have to take down a tree that for some reason the city is super emotionally attached to, they might ask you to replant a tree somewhere else,
okay.
whether it's because your services have to be connected or because it's just simply not possible to do a design around it.
Mm-hmm.
There are also certain rules about like there is less resistance to taking down certain either types of trees, species of trees, or sizes of trees. So like for example, like hedges that are just like obviously overgrown and not kept, there's a lot less resistance to taking those down, even though they're technically trees. Um, there's less resistance to taking down trees that are under a certain like size at chest height. I forget what the size is.
Okay.
But it's information that's pretty readily available, and with Google AI these days, it's a lot easier to look up a quick answer.
Yeah.
Um, and then also like your design team should be able to kind of have like a pretty good gut feeling on what the city will let you do and not do based on, current interactions with the city. And then essentially your design team will look at the building bylaws for your zone and then kind of take a look at not just like how much allowable square footage you're allowed, but also like what your building height is and what your setback is on your main floor. And do you need to set back your second floor? And how deep does your basement need to be in order for it to be considered a basement? And all of those kinds of things.
Okay.
And then they'll basically start to draw out like a hypothetical block of space on your drawings and elevations that say like this is the bubble that you can occupy. Because sometimes you do one calculation, it's like, oh, I can build 5,000 square feet, but then you do like the reasonable calculation
Mm-hmm.
that takes in all of the different parameters, and that's kind of what produces the size of the house that you can build. And then based on that and what's reasonably allowed based on your zoning,
Yeah.
then the city has to be somewhat reasonable about like whether or not they're going to make you keep a tree.
Okay, okay. So does it depend on, say if you're building a house, say you want to build a single family residence
Mhm.
compared to, let's say, a multiplex, is there a different, like, I guess, size of a house that you can build on the land then, depending on what kind of house you build, I guess?
The answer is yes, to a
Okay,
certain degree. Yes. Single family homes are like the most limited right now because they're trying to discourage them a little bit because they're trying to encourage densification.
okay.
Kind of, that's a really general like thing to say because different municipalities are looking at it differently. Like Burnaby's definitely put certain requirements around their designs and around their development fees in effort to slow it down because they recognize that they're not really prepared for their entire city to just become multiplexes.
Yeah,
Whereas to the city of Vancouver has just kind of applied like the same development fee calculation across kind of like everything. It's kind of based on like a per square footage basis, and then you're allowed to build more depending on like the number of units.
yeah.
And then it becomes like what's a rational amount to build so that each unit has like either the minimum correct amount of space or like a comfortable circulation amount of space. And
Okay,
we're going to see more kind of go into that with like accessible design because more and more we're going to see requirements for at least making allowances for accessible renovations to be done easily in the future so that people can live in place longer. So all of those kind of considerations kind of feed into what is the most realistic and reasonable design that also gives you a good end product.
gotcha. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it did. It did.
Okay.
I have other questions unless other people have to ask other questions to ask.
Seems to be no other questions. So yeah, we can definitely probably take another one or two.
Okay. What about I guess uh, the soil samples and all that sort of stuff on a site? So let's say, because you don't know what's under the house that you're going to build on.
Yeah,
So
you're talking about like geotechnical stuff,
yeah,
right?
geotechnical.
Yeah.
Now, do you sort of figure that out too before you build the house, I guess?
We get those samples and that reporting done if it's required by the municipality based on the lot. So most lots don't require them unless they are either kind of like on one of the pits, the peats in Vancouver, like one of the
Bog
big
areas.
yeah, bog areas. Thank you.
Okay.
Um, so if you're in a bog area, they'll require one. Sometimes if you're like on a really steep lot, you might be required to do one. But for the most part, because like it's not like in like the boonies where you might be building on land that hasn't been developed or filled in properly. It's
Hmm.
not like that. So the overwhelming assumption is that most communities in the lower mainland have been like almost completely excavated and filled at some point when they were being developed.
Okay.
Um, so needing to do a geotechnical is report is completely kind of up to between like if the structural engineer says it's required or if the municipality says it's required.
Yeah.
And usually the information from that report is given to the structural engineer and they'll provide you with solutions and or suggestions for alternate solutions based off of that information.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Were there any other questions or did Peter have any other questions?
Doesn't look like any other questions at this moment.
In that case, thank you so much, everyone, this evening for your time. I appreciate it. Um, Michelle sends out a copy of the webinar so you can watch it again and reprocess all the information. You're also welcome to reach out to our team, and we'll be happy to get into some of the more nitty-gritty or answer some more specific to your project questions or your property. We are expecting to take a break for the summer, so this is pretty standard for us. We take a break for the summer just because people get pretty busy with summer holidays and not being in school and all the schedules getting shaken up. We also like to take a little bit of a break before we head into our fall season, where we have, the Vancouver Fall Home Show and a few other events. So we're aiming to have a webinar Wednesday, September 24th, again at 6:30. This is right before we ramp up into a bunch of our events. So if you're wanting to kind of get a click on where you can come and meet us in person, that would be a great time to kind of come and see what we're chatting about, but also kind of get some of those details if you keep an eye out on all of the lovely things that will get circulated. And yeah, have a lovely summer, everyone. Thank you so much.